I've worked with athletes who follow every piece of confidence advice out there, and it was literally wrecking their performance. And the scary part is most athletes don't even realise it's happening. They think they've got a confidence problem when actually they've been taught the wrong way to think about confidence in the first place. So in this video, I'm going to show you a completely different way to think about confidence in sport. Not the overused advice you hear 100 of times, but a practical, research-backed blueprint you can apply for the next time you compete. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why most athletes are chasing confidence in the wrong way and what works instead. If you're new here, my name is Dr. Christie Scanlon. I've got a PhD in this area. I'm an academic and I coach athletes around mindset, well-being and performance. But more importantly, I've made these mistakes myself and I've seen how damaging the wrong approach to confidence can be. So let's break this down. Okay, I want to show you this image that you might come across in terms of academic research. On the left, there is performance, and on the bottom, there is confidence. And what you find is this graph of trying to find what optimal confidence looks like and how that might be apparent based on these two metrics. Now, a lot of scientific data looks at confidence in this way, and they pack the consequences of confidence based on how performance is going and how well you feel. But actually, we can challenge some of these conceptions, because what you find within this graph is that the more confidence that you might seem to be, the more performance improves. Confidence is not feeling good before you perform. It's a feeling, regardless of how you feel, that you are going to do the exercise or the context anyway. And I think that's a real important factor for you to think about when you feel a little bit unconfident. You might feel unconfident based on your feelings before and what might prevent you from achieving your goals. Well, in actual fact, you need to think about how you feel during the moment and how you can put yourself in situations to challenge the way that you think and challenge your mindset towards that. Now, during the video, I'm going to unpack this a little bit more. It's important to understand some of those consequences and how we might reframe confidence to ensure that you can start to think more critically about your performance. So chasing confidence is something that we might feel. And as athletes within a working environment and a competitive environment, we might start to feel doubts and we might feel this momentum of trying to chase to feel confident whilst not actually feeling confident at the time. Confidence is built through action, self-belief and overcoming fear rather than waiting for perfection. Confidence also goes up and down, and I think it's really important just to note that in terms of how we feel during certain periods of our sporting life, but also how we feel in general. Sometimes we might have doubt, feel anxious, feel uncertain about a certain situation, whether that is a competition, whether that's traveling, whether that's just normal life in general. We might feel a little bit like that. So it's accepting that we can sometimes feel a little bit unstable. Once we accept some of those consequences, we actually start to understand the feeling of confidence and think about how that might be relatable to how we perform better. We might think about anxiety and fears that can disrupt focus and timing. Negative self-talk can increase, and anxiety might be harder to process certain cues or certain things that we want to do to ensure that we are successful. So my point being is that it's really important to think about how we can't rely on positive feelings. We must think about what our performance looks like. We must reflect on what our performance looks like and start to develop a understanding around our game to ensure that we prepare, we execute, and we reflect on our performance to ensure that we feel a little bit more better in ourselves, to ensure that we are happier when we perform. So here on the board, you might see a diagram that might help you in terms of action, evidence, and confidence. And I think what I've just mentioned then really starts to unpack those areas in terms of how confidence is really built. And we might see this in terms of understanding what the task looks like. Small wins might help within that. And over time, we might develop this to ensure that we can become gradually better and execute to our full ability. A key point here is to really understand that confidence doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, it takes practice, it helps with coaching, and these videos will hopefully enable you to start to really think about how you can improve yourself and how you can develop yourself further. So feel free to click the subscribe button, because I post each week around these areas, and hopefully this information might enable you to really start to think critically about how you perform in sport and also improve yourself mentally. So just to recap step one, you don't need to feel confident, you just need to execute. And I think that's the really important factor here of how you feel and how you can develop yourself going forward. Ask yourself, what does this performance require from me? And detach your feelings if you can and focus on what those executions might be. Now that might be a challenge sometimes because we are constantly comparing ourselves to each other and we're constantly comparing ourselves to different types of people and different types of opinion. I think it's important, instead of waiting to feel good, think about what the performance requires and what you can do to develop yourself to perform, build on your thought and concentration on the task in hand. And hopefully this might avoid spiraling into self-doubt and anxiety if you can start to just dissect what you do and how you can improve gradually to execute effectively to the competition, to the performance, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. So step 2 relates to small wins. And I think repeated action and process-focused goals are really important. Sometimes to build confidence, the most tedious and boring factors will enable you to become better, and repetition will help with that. So if you keep trying to execute a certain skill, a move, a performance, then that will build trust within yourself and your outlook to that process will improve because you are improving physically. So it's really important to note how you can repeat actions and enable habits to become normalized, and you can focus on what those outcomes might be through habits to ensure that your confidence improves. Now, you might go to me, okay, Christie, well, I know that anyway. And on the board, there is a graph here based on how we define what confidence might look like depending on a particular outcome and a particular scale. If you look at any athlete or any famous superstar, they go through this process in terms of a dip and how they might reassess themselves to improve their confidence. Now, this dip might relate to performance, but it's also important to think about effort and motivation and how those things psychologically can also align with how you feel. So on the board, think about where you are on this scale and the little bit of dip that you might be going through. But more importantly, think about what happens after the dip in terms of these things that we've spoken about, of unpacking the situation that you're in. These issues that you have with confidence are only short term. If you can improve on them, then they will help you long term. A final point for me is to really think about this element of how you can train under pressure. Now, you might build confidence by putting yourself in situations that are difficult. And some of the things that I've just mentioned around building slowly and building effectively can help you to put pressure on those habits that you're trying to do to become better. And I think this will help you because when it comes to the moment when you have to perform, you might not feel the pressure as much because you've put that pressure in training and you've worked on the practice to ensure that you feel competent and confident to perform. So a couple of things that you might do within your practice is to simulate certain things that might happen and also experience discomfort that might be important. Now, I'm not saying put yourself under loads of pressure because I don't think that's healthy, but you might think about the element of discomfort and how you can challenge yourself within those areas. Now, I've put a phrase on here around mental calluses, and you might hear people like David Goggins and experts mention this word. But the more stress that you put on yourself, the more gradual you can improve yourself. And that enables you to feel more stronger mentally because you've been there and you've done it. I think that takes time, that takes practice, and through conversations such as this one we're having now, that might enable you to unpack how you feel and how you might develop some things within that. Sometimes it's hard to simulate having fans watch you or being on a certain stage where the pressure is higher than what you would feel within training. But maybe speak to your coach and think about how you can emulate some of those ideas and how that might align with some of the things that you're trying to achieve based on how you can make your performance realistic. So when it comes to the day of performance, you have a sense of confidence and that will enable you to perform at your best. So it's important just to note the truth here because you are not alone when it comes to feeling a little bit unconfident and feeling a little bit of doubt. You don't have to feel confident all the time. We all go through processes where we feel a little bit down or unsure, and that's absolutely okay. That's the journey of being an athlete. Self-doubt affects everyone. And the people that you're competing against and the people that you look up to also feel this way. They've just managed to learn to deal with it a little bit more better and focus on what they need to do to improve. It's important to note this element of fear and pressure don't disappear. It's just how we cope with those situations. The picture on the board might epitomise your training schedule and the hard times and the things that people don't see. But when it comes to you feeling a little bit more better and how you perform effectively, failure is part of the process. Once we accept failure as part of the process and we try to improve, we feel more better in ourselves as we proceed throughout our training. So a couple of final takeaways then, and a little bit of a final thought and for you to reflect on is to stop chasing feelings. That's number one. Number two is to start building evidence of how you can reflect and improve. And then thirdly, confidence follows behavior. And it's important to note that in terms of how we feel and how most athletes try and make that shift to understand some of the things that we've spoken about. So hopefully this video has helped. And what I'll do each week is to showcase some of these things and in a little bit more depth, unpack this a little bit further. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And if you want to learn about anxiety and stress, please click this video here because I will unpack this further, similar to what I've just done here. And hopefully you can learn from it and develop some ideas to improve your practice.